Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. So welcome to the closing masterclass of the Smart Green ASEAN Cities program. So my name is Melissa Kerim, and I'm Regional Engagement Lead for the GCoM-Gap Fund Partnership, and I'm also contributing to some of the activities of FMDD. Next slide. This last masterclass aims to help you prepare the pitch of your projects to present the project that you have worked on for the past few months to public and private financiers and attract different financing sources. It will be divided into three parts. The first part aims to introduce you to public and private financiers' expectation and decision-making criteria. The second part will give you a short overview of ways to build successful public-private partnership to attract private sector capital and expertise. And the third part aims to provide you with the tools to prepare a compelling project pitch that will convince public or private financiers to invest in your projects. Thank you. Let's now start with some concepts you certainly came across during the course of this masterclass. So first, the notion of eligibility questions whether your project meets the criteria set up by investors. These eligibility criteria are diverse and depend on each potential funder. So we will explain that later, but you first need to collect information on the requirements on the different requirements of these different funders. Then we have the concept of bankability that you certainly know about, which a project is considered bankable, whether from public or private perspective, when its risk return profile meets investors' criteria and can secure financing for project implementation. It's very close to the concept of finance readiness or investment readiness that is sometimes used interchangeably by partners. And for the purpose of this masterclass, we will use in majority the concept of investment readiness. And then the concept of profitability, which means that the project is able to generate attractive risk return. It has an attractive risk return profile. Thank you. So now in this slide, you see that in the case of sustainable or green projects, the concept of investment readiness goes beyond the simple analysis of the risk return profile and encompasses climate and environmental as well as socioeconomic and social metrics. So this slide shows the variety of factors to take into consideration, and some of the key criteria for the investment readiness of this climate or green projects include the probability of meeting the project's financial, environmental, social goals, and that you have certainly defined already in your project description, sufficient estimated cash flows to cover costs and produce returns that meet investors' expectations, and also to demonstrate that the project will be implemented by a credit-worthy entity. And in addition, investment readiness is understood differently if we're talking about an adaptation or a mitigation project. Of course, you need to make clear that you will need to make clear in your description to what extent your project will contribute to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the field of mitigation, or mitigate or reduce the risks in the field of adaptation. If you go to the next slide, this slide just shows that investment readiness is understood differently by the variety of stakeholders that are investing in cities. So for here on these slides, you have a diversity of public and private financiers, from multilateral development banks to bilateral agencies and to investment, to equity funds. And just to give some examples, for example, international climate funds will take into consideration the potential to scale up and replicate the project your project, or at least a project, at the country level, and will focus on the fact that the project has the possibility to produce and trigger long-term transformations. So it's the transformational aspect of your project, and that's really one of the key criteria of international climate funds. It's not the case, for example, of private banks, who will not necessarily look for a project that is going to make that will transform the lives of your citizens, but they will mostly look at the risk and the level of risk that your project includes. And they will make this risk assessment based on their internal criteria. And I will come back to that. If you go to the next slide. So we notice, and I'm sure this has been addressed as part of other sessions, we notice that despite the large variety of stakeholders involved in the city space and the multiplication of funding and financing offers and sources directly available to local governments, cities are still facing challenges to access these financing sources. Part of the challenge, but there are many, but part of the challenge is for cities to identify the right financial partners with the right financial mechanisms and the right risk allocation to support the different stages of your project development. And this session is trying to give you some insights on how to navigate this landscape of potential partners. If you go to the next slide. So one of the advice we provide as part of this masterclass is to increase your exposure to public and private financiers to understand their expectations and decision-making criteria. So the SGAC program is a great opportunity for you to connect with public and private financiers, and you've already done that through the different masterclasses and activities of the program, and you need to continue these interactions with financiers. So what it concretely means to increase exposure is that once you have developed a strong project proposal, and I'm sure you have at this stage of the program, you now need to develop a fundraising strategy and make some research on the potential public and private partners working with cities in your country and in your region, and make some research and find ways to collect information on their key priorities, and then connect with them in a strategic and systematic way. And yes, and the SGAC program, I think, was a great opportunity, and is still a great opportunity for you to map these different stakeholders, and after the program you'll need to engage with them on the regular basis, because some of these partners have shifting priorities. So here on this slide, I just wanted to show that even if the criteria to assess an investment-ready project may vary from one stakeholder to the other, there are some essentials or some harmonized factors that all financiers will consider, whether they are public financial institutions that you can see on the right, such as national, regional, or multilateral financial institutions, or UN climate funds, or UN, or multilateral agencies. Or if they are private investors, such as equity fund, private company of different sizes. And these elements are summarized on the left side of the slide. So all these investors will first have a look at the projects at the project level first. They will have a look at the project's characteristics, which means they will consider the project's cost, its revenue potential, its benefits, and its risk. And this information would need to appear in your pitch, and I will come back to that in a minute. Second, the investors will have a look at city level factors. So they will check cities' administrative capacity, financial fundamentals. So if your budget seems strong from their perspective, and they will also have a look at your technical capacity, the technical capacity of your team to manage the project, as well as the political stability and support you can receive to implement your project. And then the third level, investors will have a look at the national level factors, such as foreign currency risk, intergovernmental architecture, and fiscal transfers. And I will go back to this also in a minute. But because now, after we've introduced this criteria, we wanted to have a focus on the private sector's criteria. If you go to the next slide. Yes, because the private sector, they will consider some factors more acutely or precisely. So they will take into consideration macroeconomic considerations, such as the existence of a local bank market that can provide lending and financial services to local governments. They will also have a look at currency stability and also government commitments to stable and predictable investment incentives for low carbon solutions. So you just have to keep in mind that a private investor will not only, I've explained the 3 layers of assessment, but they will consider strongly, and they will the national and macroeconomic considerations will have a strong importance to influence the private financiers' decision to invest or not in your project. And they will also have a look at market considerations, and they will check if there are clear and predictable licensing and permitting procedures, the enforceability of contracts, and the size of the market. And all of these factors you cannot control. So you just need to understand clearly how it works in your country, and explain to the investors that you've considered the different risks coming from the macroeconomic factors and also the national context. If you go to the next slide. Yes. Now, I've talked about factors you could not influence, but what you can influence is the business model of your project. So private financiers will also have a look at the bankability of your project, so the cost and benefits of the projects, the profitability. They will try to assess the profitability of your project and potential financial returns. And they will, obviously these projects will be given a strong importance as well. So you can, in order to demonstrate that you have a strong business model, you can show that you have a vision with buy-in from key stakeholders, including the public and private stakeholders. So if you have had good experiences or good collaboration with some partners in the past, you need to highlight that during the pitch. And also, if some of them have already demonstrated their trust in your project, you also need to highlight that. You can also demonstrate or showcase the availability of upfront investment from the city as a sign of public commitment to the project. Obviously, share the track record of successful projects you have implemented in the past. You can also, if you have it, share evidence of early private sector engagement during the preparation stage of your project. And again, share a clear risk assessment that you've done of your project, show the different sources of repayment and the potential return on investment that you have identified. Now, if we go to the next slide, we wanted to focus on public-private partnerships. These models by which a public entity, whether a city or the state, collaborates with a private stakeholder, such as a company, most of the time companies. Because these models are particularly relevant to support the development of smart and sustainable cities. In fact, the private sector generally has the knowledge and upfront available capital to develop smart solutions in sectors falling under the municipal mandates in many countries. For example, in their energy or mobility sectors, but also the private sector can also develop solutions, smart solutions linked to climate change. So in sectors such as waste management or smart air quality monitoring, which is particularly relevant to the solutions you have developed as part of the SGAC program. If you go to the next slide. So if you are willing to develop a public-private partnership or PPP, but you do not yet know how to do this, we have added in this slide some of the steps to undertake to make sure that you've considered all the criteria and all the steps to develop a public-private partnership. And this framework is actually taken from the Phuket Smart City White Paper, which has been developed to support the Ville of Phuket in Thailand, to develop smart cities solutions. So it follows four successive steps, and the first one focuses on framework development. So it means that you would need to understand the legal framework on PPP in your home country. And there are very good resources of the Asian Development Bank that in recent reports that summarize the legal and regulatory framework in many countries in your region. And we will share that after the meeting, after the webinar. And then you could explore successful case studies of public-private partnerships, both in your country and in different sectors, but also a good example of PPPs globally. And again, there are some good resources that show smart cities, PPPs around the world, and that could inspire you. And as part of the GCoM-Gap program, I'm sure you came across some of them. Then you can undertake on this as a second step, a smart city services deep dive, which means you can map national and local private companies that could be willing to partner with you on one smart city project in one specific sector, and again to think strategically which sector are a priority for your city, and that's the next step. But also this step is really about identifying the right partner for your different projects, and understand how you will lead these discussions. So also build internal capacity to make sure that you have the capacity in-house to sign an equitable contract with the private sector, and and that you will be able to manage a long-term partnership, and that you have the in-house capacity to do so. The third step is about prioritization, and of course you need to make sure that the projects that you finally select is aligned with your local strategies, as well as national strategies, as well as political priorities, since it would speed up the process to have the political support to build this partnership. In the case of Phuket, they received also strong support from the national government, because Phuket was one of the cities selected by the national government as pilot smart cities. Smart cities as part of a nationwide project, and it really helped to the city to find the right partners and build these strong and long-lasting partnerships. And the last point is the shortlisted services details. So you will, now that you have identified partners, you can start. You can ask for. You can start building the partnership. You can ask for the different prices of the different partners, and develop a strong business model and action plan for the whole duration of the project cycle. And yeah, this is basically the last part is very important to consider, and to consider long-term implementation, to make sure that you've assessed all the risk, that you have taken into consideration legally all the potential risks, and that the city will benefit from this partnership, because there are some examples of municipal partnerships that were detrimental to the city because of this lack of consideration of all the potential legal, financial risks and climate risks, actually. If we go to the next slide, we wanted to give you one example, which is the Silacap waste to refuse derived fuel technology in Indonesia. And it's a renewable, refuse derived fuel, RDF, is a renewable energy source produced from combustible components of municipal solid waste. And this waste is typically originates from industrial or commercial sites, and it undergoes then shredding, drying, and burning to generate electricity. So this project is spearheaded by the local governments, and it's supported by various national and international agencies. The RDF plant processes waste from 14 districts into a coal substitute. And it has been initially supported with an investment of 84 billion rupiah. And the plant was supported by various stakeholders, including the Ministry of Public Works and Housing, the Danish International Development Agency, DANIDA, the Central Java Provincial Government, and the Cilacap Regency Government, and then, of course, private stakeholders. So it shows that, and it's well demonstrated on this slide, that the different layers of government collaborated together, and these different layers have different guarantee tools to offer to private financiers. So, for example, if you get a guarantee from the state, obviously it will reduce the level of risk for private financiers to invest in your project, because they know that they will find a way. They will certainly get their money back. And the more guarantees you get, and it can be from the provincial government if you have one in your country, and from the national government, you can have a mix of guarantees from different stakeholders, the more likely then you will increase the level of trust from private partners to invest in your project. So going back to the Silacap waste project, it is operational since 2017, and it has a strong and it attracted the attention of political leaders, since the Indonesian president also visited the site in January this year and highlighted the progress made since its launch.